I hadn't planned on going. The wine tasting was one of those things my coworker signed me up for, claiming I needed to get out of my apartment. I thought I'd stand in the corner, half smiling, pretending to know the difference between dry and oaky, then slip out early. Instead, I found myself at a long table, glass in hand, watching people swirl and sniff like it was a ritual. The room smelled like oak and fruit, faintly sweet, faintly sharp. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. Lately, I'd been letting messages sit unread. Half the time, I didn't know what to say back anyway. I was staring at the label on the bottle in front of me when I heard a voice at my side. "You're not actually tasting it, are you?" I looked up. She was leaning just slightly toward me, a woman maybe in her mid-40s, elegant without trying too hard. Dark hair pulled back, a simple silver ring on her hand. Her smile wasn't mocking, more like she'd caught me bluffing. I tried to recover. I thought just holding the glass was part of the experience." She laughed softly. Not loud enough to draw attention, but enough that I noticed the tiny lines near her eyes. She shook her head. "At least pretend to swirl it. You'll look less lost." I did as she said, swirling clumsily. The liquid caught the light. "Better? Almost convincing," she said, eyes flicking to my glass, then back to me. It should have ended there. A polite exchange, a smile, both of us turning back to the table. But she didn't. She stayed close, resting her elbow lightly on the counter. A pause stretched, the kind where you wonder if you should fill it or just let it hang. I cleared my throat. "You come to these often?" "Not really." She tilted her glass, studying it. "A friend dragged me here. Said I needed to get out of my house." I laughed quietly. "Guess we're both here against our will." The corner of her mouth lifted. "Maybe that's why the wine tastes better. Misery makes the palate sharper." Something about the way she said it, dry, understated, made it feel like we were in on the same private joke. I wanted to say more, but words stalled in my chest. So I watched her swirl her glass again. My eyes caught on the way her fingers rested against the stem, steady, deliberate. I realized I was holding mine too tight, knuckles pale. I loosened my grip. The host called for everyone to move to the next station. People shuffled forward, their voices a low hum. She stepped aside, letting me pass first, and when I did, her hand brushed lightly against my sleeve. Probably nothing. Probably accidental. But I kept replaying it as I moved down the table. I didn't see her again until near the end, when the crowd thinned and the chatter dulled. I was setting my glass down, ready to leave, when she appeared at my side again. "You survived," she said, eyes catching mine. "Barely. Think I'll stick to coffee." She tilted her head, studying me for a moment longer than necessary. Then she slipped something across the counter toward me. Not a phone number. Not a note. Just a folded napkin, faint wine stain on the corner. "Keep it," she said, almost under her breath. "You looked like you needed something to remember this by." And then she was gone, moving toward the door before I could answer. I unfolded the napkin later, in the quiet of my apartment. On it, in careful handwriting, "Next time, don't fake it. Call me." The number was there, just below the line. I stared at it, the room too quiet, the clock ticking louder than usual. My phone was in my hand before I even realized it. But my thumb hovered, not dialing, just holding the screen awake, as if waiting for something I couldn't yet name. I didn't call right away. I kept the napkin folded on my desk, next to the lamp. Some nights I'd glance at it, thumb the edge, imagine what I'd even say if she picked up. Days passed like that, hesitation wrapped in excuses. It was her who finally broke the silence. A text late evening. "Coffee? Tomorrow. I'll pick the place." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. My chest felt both heavy and light, like I was bracing for something I wasn't sure I could hold. The cafe she chose was small, quiet, with wooden tables that bore old scratches. She was already there when I walked in, stirring tea. Her coat draped neatly over the chair beside her. She looked up when I came in, and for a second, I froze, not because she was intimidating, but because she looked so at ease, like she belonged in every room she walked into. "You came," she said, simple. "Yeah," I muttered, sliding into the seat across from her. "Didn't want to keep faking wine expertise forever." Her laugh was soft. She pushed a cup toward me. "I ordered for you. Black coffee, no sugar. Am I wrong?" I blinked. "How did you? You looked like the type. Straightforward. A little bitter." She sipped her tea, eyes flicking up to see my reaction. I smirked, but the truth was, it unsettled me, the way she noticed things I hadn't said out loud. There was a pause. Outside, someone's dog barked faintly, a leash jangling. She set her cup down and said, almost casually, "I don't usually do this." "Coffee?" I asked. "No." Her lips curved, but her eyes stayed steady on mine. "Giving strangers my number." The weight of what she didn't say hung between us. I could feel the gap, her mid-40s, my early 20s. Different maps of life already drawn. I wondered if people in the cafe noticed, if they were piecing together a story of why we sat there, leaning just slightly closer than we should. I wanted to ask why me, but instead I said, "What made you?" Her hands tightened briefly around the mug. "You looked alone." She let out a small breath. I recognized it. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Just nodded. We sat in the silence for a while, her gaze somewhere past the window, mine fixed on the steam rising from my cup. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I ignored it. "Divorce," she said finally, voice level. 3 years now." The word hung in the air, uninvited but unmoving. She didn't look at me after saying it. Just traced the rim of her cup with her finger. Something inside me tightened. I wanted to reach across, to tell her I understood even if I didn't. But all I managed was, "I'm sorry." Her eyes flicked up. "Don't be. Some things end. That doesn't mean they were mistakes." I thought about that all the way home. The way she'd looked at me before standing up, her hand brushing my sleeve again, not by accident this time. A small gesture. Too brief, too light. But it stayed. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. We started meeting without planning to. A chance crossing in the hallway outside the cafe. A nod in the grocery store that turned into 10 minutes by the fruit aisle, both of us pretending to compare apples we didn't need. Small things. It was easier to pretend these were accidents than to admit I was waiting for them. One night, I found myself outside her apartment. She'd mentioned she kept extra books she never read stacked by the door. I knocked, soft, hesitant. She opened barefoot, hair loose this time. The sight made something catch in my chest. "You actually came," she said, a half-smile playing on her lips. "You offered," I said, holding up an empty hand, as if that excused the reasonless visit. She let me in. The air smelled faintly of jasmine tea. A lamp glowed low in the corner. We sat on her couch, a small distance between us that felt measured. She handed me a book without asking what I liked. "Try this one. It's slow at first, but worth it." I turned it over in my hands, pretending to read the back. My eyes kept flicking to hers, the way she folded one leg under herself, the way her fingers idly twisted the string of her tea bag. "You okay?" she asked suddenly. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Just long day." She didn't press. Just nodded, though I could tell she didn't quite believe me. Silence stretched. Comfortable, almost. Then, her phone buzzed on the table. The name lit up the screen, Emma. A younger woman's picture beside it. She reached for it fast, face unreadable. Screen down, then a small exhale. "Your daughter?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her hand froze on the cup. A beat too long before she answered. "Yes." Then softer. "She's older than you." The words landed heavy. I swallowed, the heat rising in my face. She didn't look at me, just stirred her tea as if nothing had shifted. I wanted to say something, anything, to break it. But the air was already thick with what neither of us should be thinking. Does she live nearby? I asked, my voice thin. She shook her head. No. But she visits. The implication sat there sharp. Visits. Could walk through that door at any time. I rubbed the book's spine with my thumb, restless. My chest tightened with something like guilt, though nothing had happened. Not yet. When I finally glanced up, she was already watching me. Her gaze steady, searching. For what, I couldn't tell. The silence cracked. I shifted closer without meaning to, barely an inch, maybe two. Close enough to feel her warmth, not close enough to touch. Her breath caught, quiet. She didn't move away. For a moment, one fragile, dangerous moment, it felt like we were both leaning into something that couldn't be named. But then she turned her face slightly, as if remembering herself, and the space between us snapped back. Read the book, she said softly, almost like a warning. I nodded, though my pulse was still unsteady. And in that pause, in that almost, I knew how close we'd come. It was raining the night we ended up walking together. Not heavy, just that steady drizzle that slicks the pavement and makes streetlights blur. She'd forgotten an umbrella. I held mine awkwardly between us, tilting it more toward her than me. We walked without saying much. Our footsteps out of sync, then falling in rhythm. The air smelled of wet earth and asphalt. At the corner, we paused under a tree. She brushed damp hair from her face, eyes catching mine. For a second, the world shrank, just the sound of rain on leaves and the faint hum of traffic. You ever think about it? She asked suddenly. About what? Stopping. Before things go too far. Her voice was calm, but I could see the tightness in her jaw. I opened my mouth, closed it again. Words slipped through like water. I don't even know what too far means anymore. Her lips pressed into a line. She glanced away, watching the rain pool at the curb. Something inside me cracked. Do you regret it? I asked, quieter than I meant to. Regret what? This. Talking to me. Letting me. I stopped, the words sticking in my throat. In. Her breath caught, just audible over the rain. It's not regret, she said slowly. It's fear. The honesty of it landed heavy. She didn't look at me, just kept her eyes fixed forward, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. I wanted to say something to ease it, to make her laugh, to push the weight aside. But all I managed was fear of what? Her shoulders lifted, fell. Of being seen. Of forgetting how to stop. Of you waking up one day and realizing I'm not the story you want. The words sat between us, raw, unguarded. My chest tightened. I thought of all the nights I'd replayed her gestures, the brush of her hand, the way she noticed small things about me. I thought of how long I'd gone without anyone seeing me at all. I shifted the umbrella, letting it tip just enough that the rain misted my shoulder. My voice was rough. I already realized something. She looked at me then, finally. Rain clung to her lashes, glimmering in the dim light. That I don't want this to stop, I said. The sentence trailed off, unfinished, like I couldn't quite hold the weight of what I was admitting. Her eyes searched mine. I could feel her breath, shallow, close. A pause stretched, dangerous, trembling. The kind of pause where anything could happen. Her hand twitched slightly, like she almost reached for me but pulled back at the last second. The rain hissed around us, steady, patient. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Then finally whispered, "And if I can't give you what you think you want?" The question hung there, fragile, suspended. And I didn't have an answer. It happened in her kitchen, late. She'd invited me in after a walk, saying it was too cold to just leave me at the door. The place was dim except for the light above the stove, warm but quiet. She set water to boil, moving with a kind of practiced ease, while I sat at the small table, watching my hands fidget with the book I still hadn't finished. Neither of us spoke much. Just the hum of the kettle, the ticking of the clock. I thought about leaving, slipping out before the silence became too heavy, but I stayed. When the water was ready, she poured tea into 2 chipped mugs and slid one across to me. Then she leaned against the counter, arms folded, staring into her own cup like it might give her answers. Finally she said, "This can't keep going, you know." My throat tightened. "I know." She nodded once, slow. But her fingers tapped against the porcelain, restless. "You're too young. And I'm—" She stopped, shook her head. "I should know better." I looked down, tracing the rim of my mug. Steam curled into my face. The words came before I could stop them. "Then why don't you?" That broke something. She set the cup down harder than she meant to, then pressed both hands flat to the counter. "Because I don't want to." Her voice cracked there, just slightly. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. My chest ached with it. "I'm scared," she admitted, softer now, not looking at me. "Of what people would think. Of what I would think of myself. But mostly," she trailed off, eyes flicking up to meet mine at last, "mostly of how much I'd miss this if it ended." I didn't realize I had moved until I was standing closer, my hand hovering in the air like I wasn't sure if I was allowed to close the distance. "You won't," I said, my voice low. "I mean, if it ends, yeah, it'll hurt. But you won't be alone in it. Not anymore." She exhaled, long and shaky. Her eyes softened, even as they glistened with something unspoken. For a moment, we just stood there, me clutching my mug like an anchor, her leaning against the counter like she needed it to stay upright. Then she reached out, slow, deliberate. Her hand brushed against mine, barely there, just enough to feel the warmth of her skin. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a declaration. But it was more real than either. Her thumb rested against my knuckle. Small, steady. I didn't move. Didn't need to. She gave the faintest smile, tired but unguarded. "Okay," she whispered. And that was enough. It didn't change overnight. Nothing dramatic, no fireworks. Just small things, barely noticeable if you weren't looking. I started keeping black coffee in her cupboard. She started keeping a spare umbrella by her door. We didn't call it anything. We didn't need to. Most mornings, I'd see her sitting on the bench outside the corner bakery, tea in hand. If I was running late, she'd just raise an eyebrow and check her watch like she was timing me. I always claimed the clock was fast. She never corrected me. Sometimes I'd stay over after long evenings of nothing special, books, quiet meals, just being in the same room. She'd fuss about dishes, I'd insist on drying. Our arguments were always about small, ordinary things, which felt like their own kind of safety. Her daughter visited once. I left before she came, slipping out early. Later, she texted me, "Thanks for understanding." I didn't need more than that. We both knew what it meant. There were moments I wondered if it would last. Not in a dramatic way, just in the quiet drift of doubt. But then there'd be a look, a touch, something so slight it anchored me back. Like the time it rained again. Same corner, same drizzle, the umbrella tilted more toward her than me. She looked at me and smiled in that small, almost invisible way. It wasn't about the rain. It was about remembering. About everything we hadn't said that night under the tree but somehow still carried. She still drinks tea. I still drink black coffee. But sometimes, we trade cups. She'll take mine, wince at the bitterness, hand it back with a muttered, "Still awful." And I'll take hers, sweeter than I'd ever admit I like, and pretend not to enjoy it. No declarations, no dramatic promises. Just a slow unfolding into something that felt lived in, like a room that finally fit right after years of being half empty. One evening, I found that old napkin tucked in a drawer, the faint stains still visible. I handed it to her, half joking. "You kept this?" I asked. She looked at it for a long moment, then at me. "You did too." We didn't laugh. Didn't need to. The silence that followed was warmer than words. I don't know if this is love the way people write about it. All I know is the quiet steadiness of it, the shared walks, the bench at 8:47 a.m., the chipped mugs on her counter. The way being seen stopped feeling frightening and started feeling like home. And that's enough, Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?